Welcome to our Saturday simulcast, recorded just a few short hours after the Purdue 56-0 win over Indiana State. I want to thank our sponsor, the Union Club Hotel, the 811 Bistro, Boiler Up Bar. We appreciate their support, and I'm sure there's some things going on there tonight after the Boilermaker win over the Sycamores. 53,000 and some saw it. And Purdue gets back on the winning track, 1-1 now, heading to Syracuse. And Tom, I'll start with you. Again, kind of, I don't know how you could script it probably any better for Purdue. I mean, in terms of you got a lot of guys to play. You had 4 quarterbacks that played. I don't know what the total number of players was, but no injuries that at least I'm aware of, and maybe I missed something there. But things kind of went about as good as it could when in a 56-0 win over Indiana State.
Yeah, I have to think, Alan, they checked most every box they wanted to check when this game started. And like you said, went as well as could be expected from an outcome and performance standpoint. Purdue did not mess around at all, got right to business, put their foot on the neck of these guys, and dominated from the opening whistle all the way to obviously the final gun. And there were a few, I guess, little roller coaster moments, if you will, and it was good to see how Purdue responded. And I think for me, defensively, guys, the 2 times Indiana State really threatened to hit pay dirt, right?
Yeah.
One time they went for it on 4th down, right near the goal line, and Purdue stuffed the running back. And then, of course, in the north end zone, when the pass was intercepted in the end zone, tipped by Cam Allen, intercepted by Jamari Brown. So the defense sort of bowed its back there. Nice to see that fortitude and the will of everybody just to maintain that shutout over the course of 60 minutes. That's hard to do. So I think that was positive as well. And again, guys, you could talk about any number of guys on the final stat sheet and find a lot of very positive things to say. But I guess for me, I'm going to give you Cam Allen.
Yeah.
This may be a guy who could maybe be the Big Ten Defensive Player of the Week. He only had 2 tackles, but, of course, the pick 6 going for 65 yards was huge. And then and he's the guy that tipped the ball that Jamari Brown intercepted. And right off the jump, guys, first play of the game, he recovers a fumble. So some big plays by number 10. And again, Purdue's got to be filled with some confidence as we move and ease into next week. And we all know how big that game is going to be at Syracuse, guys. Going to be a big mountain to climb. But again, Purdue has a lot of mojo here as they head east next week.
Yeah, Cam Allen could have had a second pick 6,
Yeah.
and Chris Jefferson could have had his second in 2 weeks in some ways, but that's getting pretty picky on what we saw. Brian, your take on a 56-0 win a game like this, when I think I spent about the last half of the game looking up numbers. It was the best defensive performance in the 21st century in terms of yards given up in a game. And I understand against Indiana State, it is Indiana State, but what do you glean from a game like this?
Well, I mean, I think it's the appropriate tack to take after a game like this to always just rain on the parade, and just remind everyone that, those rushing yards don't matter as much as they would against somebody else, because you aren't going to run for 200 yards against Wisconsin or Iowa, most likely. Purdue, I mean, all you can do is play who's on your schedule, and I don't think you could have asked a whole lot more from Purdue. But, extrapolating this outcome and all that went into it as anything predictive, kind of moving forward, starting at Syracuse, that's the context I think that always has to kind of, hang over all of this stuff. But that said, I mean, you can't ask for much more than what Purdue did. Aiden O'Connell and Charlie Jones, that was like perfection in the first half. I liked how they got Tyrone Tracy involved. I think that showed you a model of what he can be for this offense. And I think that's a necessary model, because it's sort of a guy who can help you in the running game, can give you some versatility on offense, can, be that kind of short passing guy too, who can really help you control the ball when you need to and not have to rely so much on deep drops, as much as Purdue tends to do sometimes, especially when pass protection, inevitably becomes a concern. I like the competitive streak you saw in the defense. I think they got bored there for a while when they were up 21-0, gave up some yards. And then when it came time to buckle down, so to speak, and get that goal line stand and get that turnover, which was largely generated by pressure. Purdue got a lot of pressure on the quarterbacks today, I thought, as they should against Indiana State. But nevertheless, I think that was significant. I think you saw a real edge to that defense. And I think, sometimes when there's a shutout on the line, guys kind of take that personally. Now, that was the first half, so Purdue wasn't trying to finish off a shutout. They were just kind of showing some personal pride in terms of keeping Indiana State out of the end zone. That Purdue, finished off the shutout with a bunch of backups out there in the second half. There's probably some significance there. I don't know. I don't know if you feel like Purdue's a deeper team today than they were yesterday. They might be, but once again, these are not game conditions that are going to repeat themselves very often this season. Purdue might not have this luxury again this year, for all we know. FAU, you don't want to get ahead of yourself, but maybe. I think from top to bottom, everyone who stepped on the field, there's really nothing to nitpick here. A backup punt returner fumbled a punt.
Yeah,
probably the last punt he's going to field all year. So.
Did they put him in after?
Yeah, he stayed in the game.
Yeah.
Which I thought was actually significant, only because I thought that was just kind of interesting that he gave him another chance. Now, I think he only returned one, but my point is that, like you said, Brian, they took care of business, and that's about all you can evaluate him on. But that's beats the heck out of not playing well and having a close game against these guys. Yeah,
big. Again, I know Brian's going to run out tomorrow and go buy his number 45 jersey.
I was going to ask that.
Devin Mockabee, the walk-on parade led that ground attack. 2 walk-ons led him in rushing. Mockabee, and of course, Dylan Downing. Purdue's 200 yards rushing, guys. I'm writing some stuff tonight. And last time they ran for over 200 yards as a team in a game. You got to go back to 2018 at Illinois.
Yeah.
Well, again, I understand the context Brian's providing. This wasn't a Big Ten opponent. But I guess, again, at least Purdue dominated, because so often you see some of these Power 5 programs struggle with these FCS programs. So, again, I understand you have to keep all this in context. We're not going to throw a parade tomorrow for Purdue. But, again, at least they did what they were supposed to do. So, I think that's the one thing to celebrate. And like Brian said, there really isn't too many nits to pick, if you will, right? Charlie Jones, guys, already has 21 catches. He's already equaled the number of catches he had at Iowa last year in just 2 games. He has the hat trick of touchdowns tonight as well. So on and on it goes for him. On an injury front, guys, Brock Thompson played very little. I saw him on the field early on. I don't know if he played much beyond the first series or 2, if at all. I think it's going to be a tightrope all year with that guy and his knees and his legs. Just getting him to game day is going to be a struggle. And if he plays well, it may be a bonus. Jeff Brom afterwards talked about Jalen Graham a little bit. They're going to have to try to get by with him for the next 3 or 4 weeks here. And, Samiki Fakasieki didn't play today. That was the one surprise scratch. And we'll see what the prognosis is for him moving forward here, though. But, Alan, to your point off the jump for us, I think they did come out of this thing relatively healthy, and that was another major accomplishment, right?
Yeah.
Can I make one more point that just dawned on me about the running numbers? Well, all of Purdue's rushing attempts there in the second half came from Dylan Downing, Devin Mockabee, and Kobe Lewis, right? So Dylan Downing comes to Purdue from UNLV.
Yeah.
Devin Mockabee was committed out of high school to Army.
Mm-hmm.
Kobe Lewis transfers in from Central Michigan. Those are still all higher level programs in Indiana State. So your walk-ons, and you're, in Kobe Lewis's case, the guy who right now seems to be 3rd or 4th in the pecking order, those are all still guys who were higher level recruits than the guys they were playing against, which is a very uncommon thing for Purdue, especially in games like this. But it's just one of those deals where, you're trying not to you're not really trying to score in the second half, but you just hand the ball off and you're just so superior at every position. And it just kind of happens. That's sort of the nature of the competitive imbalance in college football nowadays. And, I don't think you're going to see these games probably ever again. And that's
okay.
Well,
it's kind of fun to beat somebody up.
It's okay from like an interest perspective, but at the same time, Indiana State needs these games.
Oh yeah.
It's
financially.
I understand you can't really do this in football because football is you only get so many football games in a year.
Mm-hmm.
But I always thought that if it gets to the point where the Power Five is only playing the Power Five, let these schools do what basketball does and have a couple of preseason games. You can make it part of your season ticket package. Fans might not love that, but they've been paying for it all these years anyway. Doesn't count, I guess it should count, but
but you got to find a way to payday for some of these programs. I mean,
exactly.
I agree. But I don't know if that's going to happen.
I know, because
it's a good idea, fair idea. It's fair
because the people who are supposed to be looking out for the best interest of everyone would be the NCAA, and they've lost control of this whole thing anyway. The Power Five isn't going to say, "Hey, let's go do this for their sake."
Yeah,
let's share the money with somebody we don't have to share the money with. That's just my personal college football bleeding heart view. So sorry, I took us in a weird direction there. Well, but no, I always thought in basketball that they ought to take your three lowest. It used to be the RPI. Now it's the whatever the hell it's called, the net rankings. Take your three lowest, unless you lose. Take your three lowest wins and take those off your resume. Yeah. That way, Purdue shouldn't avoid Chicago State like the plague, which is what's happening now. Is people not only do they not want to schedule these games, it's literally against their best interest to schedule these games, because just going out there and playing them and beating them hurts you. But that's just I've taken us in a weird direction here. I'm sorry.
Well, I think in the 12 team playoff and and 6 at large, that could, some of that stuff. And again, you guys may be right that in the $1 billion contract world, these games may not exist, but maybe they will. Maybe they will go to, because I do think there is some need. There are a lot of coaches. There are a lot of people that you look at a Kurt Mallory who's been at every other Power 5 program as an assistant. I mean, they are inbred into the fabric of college football in some fashion, even though they're lesser programs. It'll be interesting to see if anybody does want to share any part of any of this down the road. But you're right, that's a topic for down the road. Now, I did think you're right about that, Brian, because Tyrone Tracy had 3 rushes for 34 yards all in the first half. And Devin Mockabee had 78 yards. I will say this, in the risk of being, I did think he ran hard. I liked the way he went north and south. I'm not saying we're ever going to see it again. I don't know. I know that they've talked about him. He's been a guy that they've been impressed with, at least in terms of getting on the field. It'll be interesting to see if he sees the light of day down the road or at Syracuse or later. But I was impressed by him.
He looked good. No, he
ran hard. I mean,
legitimately looked good. He was impressive. Can't ask a whole lot more of a kid than
I just
how he took advantage of his opportunity today.
Right. And I think just running north and south, just running hard. I think I'm not ragging on the other guys. I'm just saying I think that when they're in a team that struggles to make 2 yards, sometimes running football, that might be good. Now, Tom, what was your, the defense, obviously, again, where everything's in context, but Sanusi Kane coming in and playing for Jalen Graham, and Graham's going to be out for a while, as we've talked about. But I thought he made, he had 1 forced fumble, 7 tackles. Bryce Hampton comes in, has 3 tackles to play, some today. Jack Sullivan gets a nice sack in there, but Mo Amanade had a fair number of snaps as well. I don't know how many total. Again, good for depth. It's got to be at least good for practice that you get all these guys on the field.
Yeah, it just does good for the morale, too, of the players to have some payoff for all that work, I'm always happy for those guys. Yeah, Alan, the Jalen Graham void, when it comes to really replacing him on the field when they start playing, if this injury lingers into October, and you start playing the physical teams like Minnesota in particular, you need heavy bodies in there, and we're going to see more of Jacob Wahlberg. We saw more of him today.
Yeah.
See more of Clyde Washington as well, are two bigger body guys that I think could see their PT, increased as well. And yeah, I think he wasn't needed today, but boy, they certainly could use Jalen. They could use him when they go to Syracuse. So hopefully he's back for that. The beginning of October when Purdue's opening on the road at Minnesota and at Maryland. We're certainly going to need him there. But this is something that he's had before. He fought through it last year. Jeff Blum said he played through it in the bowl game, and they held him out in the spring. And here we are again with this same, I guess, impact fracture to one of his tibias. Was how it's been explained to me. So it's unfortunate, but you have to move on. And I think they may have the personnel that can maybe fill this void. But guys, again, a dominating day. 11 different players caught passes. 7 different players ran the ball. 4 different players were under center today. And guys, there were 4 different guys who got to kick the ball today, and one of them being one of our own, Caleb Crockover.
That's the highlight of the day.
Chad Crockover, our outstanding photographer. His son got a chance to kick an extra point today, which was just a real joy to see. And yeah, guys, Alan, 3 West Lafayette Red Devils suited up today and played and contributed between Caleb and Yanni.
Yanni got on the field as well. So that was
not bad for a school, 800 kids.
Yep, they did well. So all right, now next week, guys, it will noon kick in Syracuse, and Syracuse a 48-14 win over UConn. The thing is, I don't know a lot about him. Garrett Schrader, their quarterback, had kind of a Aiden O'Connell day today against UConn in a game that was not close, obviously. And UConn, we saw UConn last year might have been one of the worst Power 5, not Power 5, but division or FBS programs I've ever seen. But he did have
teams. One of the worst teams you've ever seen. You could just say teams.
All right, yeah.
Don't need any adjectives or anything.
Yeah,
like
I think
that.
they were awful. But he had another big day today at quarterback. He is a threat. They always talk about Garrett Schrader, the Syracuse quarterback, as a guy that doesn't throw the football well, but he's had a 20 for 23 day today, kind of like I said, like an Aiden O'Connell day. And they've got a very good. They've got some. Syracuse has shown it also in running back situation that they've got a guy that they've touted. Sean Tucker is a pretty good. Had another 100-yard day, I think, today. But a guy that can run the football, and that environment at the not the Carrier Dome anymore. What I had to be corrected on what it is, the JMA something. I'll get this right here in a minute. But anyway, it's going to be a big challenge, I think, for Purdue to go into that type of environment. Syracuse and Dino Babers, of course, a former Purdue assistant way back in the day. It's going to be a big challenge going there to play a game that's going to really matter for Purdue next week.
Yeah, we'll see. You guys. This sport changes radically from week to week. Just watch the results.
Look at this week. Yeah, it's crazy.
So it took me a long time to settle down and not overreact positively or negatively week to week. So, we'll see. Syracuse, I think, like you said, they've got a strong running attack. They took care of Louisville that opening week 31-7. Louisville turned around. I think on Friday night they won at Central Florida, a nice win. So, like I said, it's going to be a heck of a challenge. I imagine Syracuse is going to be at least a 3-point favorite.
I was going to ask that. You think so?
I think at least a 3-point favorite.
Okay.
That's usually just what you get for the home field. So maybe it'll be a couple more beyond that. We'll see. But it'll be a good challenge. These non-conference road games have not been kind to Purdue. I don't have to remind you two of that. I remember Purdue losing in Hawaii, losing at Rice. losing Marshall. I was there when they got
They beat the hell out of
Missouri.
Missouri. That's the only one they've.
Missouri, yeah,
Yeah.
that
That
was
was shocking as well.
so who knows? Who knows? The one Power 5 team they play on the road, they whip, right? Uh, so
Well,
yeah,
I do think it's stating the obvious though, and Brian, I'll let you comment. It is an extremely important game because if you really do have goals to which they do, to try to get to 8 or 9 wins, and even if you whether they can win the West Division or not, that certainly remains to be seen at best. But still, if you want to, games like this matter for bowl position and just how many games you can win this year. And before this year, at least for me, I kind of circled this game and said, well, I think that's a game Purdue is going to win.
yeah.
And of course, that's changed maybe now that based on how Syracuse has played in the first 2 weeks. But maybe it's just that hard predicting week in, week out the way teams play. But Brian, I mean, looking at the context of everything, it is a huge game on that early schedule.
Yeah, I mean, what's funny about college football is that September can be kind of uneven.
Yeah,
you see crazy things happen right now. There's teams in the Big Ten West who cannot score.
Yeah,
Iowa can't score. Wisconsin's not exactly lighting the world on fire here. You saw a lot of people get beat by quote unquote inferior opponents, and that's those could be blips. Those could just be, as I always say, we could be looking at this at the end of the year. We can be looking at those games as like punchlines.
right.
But the problem with college football is every game matters so damn much. The good news for Purdue is, that Penn State game wasn't a divisional game because Purdue obviously, let one get away there, which you don't often say about Purdue when they lose to Penn State. I think there was a lot of positive that came out of that game nonetheless. But, you don't get very many opportunities to get it right in college football, and, trips to Syracuse, things like this, where they're tough games. You got to play well. Obviously, you aren't going to back into wins in games like this, and it is important. It's important from a win total perspective. It's important from if you're fortunate enough to get to a bowl game, which we're all assuming Purdue will be. It matters what bowl game you go to. It matters to the prestige that comes with what sort of season you have. It affects the momentum you have as a program, which affects recruiting, which affects your talent level moving forward. It affects your ability to win moving forward. Basically, what I'm trying to say here is winning is always better than not winning.
There you go. That is the most prolific thing that was the best statement. By the way, it is the JMA wireless dome. It was the Carrier Dome until earlier this year, and I don't know if JMA just bought out that. But yeah,
the game that may end up really determining this whole pecking order in the West is Purdue and Minnesota.
Yeah. Minnesota's at least on paper, has looked good in their first 2 games and come out solid. And
I guess this division looks like it's wide open. I know it's still early, but again,
yeah,
it doesn't appear to be a 10,000-pound gorilla, fellas.
You have no good offenses.
Yeah.
I mean, you have no good offenses in the Big Ten West right now.
Yeah.
Right.
No,
I don't know what Minnesota's doing. I know they're putting up numbers, putting up points, but I don't know if that's like
they've beaten
sustainable productivity.
In Western Illinois, so they haven't beaten anybody any good, but they've dominated them. So, yeah, we'll find out more, obviously. But yeah, you're right.
That could give Purdue, a distinct advantage. I mean, obviously, theoretically, Purdue's going to be able to consistently score. We'll see on that as well. But that part, how can you explain, Northwestern? I don't know. It is. That's the whole point of all this. You just can't explain it. It's college football has always been a week-to-week proposition, especially, I agree with you, Brian, in September. You just don't know. And that may give Purdue an advantage to go out and play very well next week. And just because Syracuse is off to a good start, doesn't, and they, maybe they haven't played anybody, though they did, Louisville on paper at least was supposed to be relatively decent, but
something else too about September in college football now. All these teams are breaking in so many transfers.
Yeah,
that I think people are playing more new son of, what?
Yeah.
I don't even need this thing. people are playing so many more new players, than they used to. And it's almost like sort of the non-conference season in basketball, where basketball plays more freshmen than, football typically does. There's always going to be some unevenness there when you first come out and play for the first time. And, there's so many people just debuting guys, and, training camp only takes you so far in terms of acclimating guys to your systems, which are much more intricate than they are in a lot of other sports. And you sort of wonder if that doesn't make September even more topsy-turvy here in college football moving forward.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting, and it will be a storyline that we're watching. And as of this recording, how's Nebraska doing?
They're down 38-35 with 4:02 to play, but it looks like they just hit a big completion down the field, down to the Georgia Southern goal line. It's under review. I don't know what's being reviewed. I've got Indiana on my phone here in front of me, and I've got Nebraska on the TV.
IU's battled back from there.
They're up 23-10. They just hit a couple big plays.
They got that game in hand. So, all right, guys, the first one that can predict this stuff week in, week out can make a lot of money and quit this job. And
the only person who knows, the only entity that knows what's going to happen every week somehow is Vegas.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, who do we feel? And lastly, Notre Dame, and of course Purdue fans. For some reason, at least the ones I'm around, take a lot of. Think that's great that Notre Dame, for the first time in its history, starts 0-3. Marcus Freeman, who we all agree is a great guy, and we don't want to. We hope, at least I'll speak for myself, think that hope they'll have success. But again, another example. How can Marshall go to Notre Dame and win? Hard to believe. But
Stephen Faucheux.
Yeah, I didn't think about that.
Did Stephen Faucheux play?
I don't know.
I know.
Text Brian or DM his dad.
That's a 4-star recruit, right? Wasn't he? So that's case in point. So it's going to be an season. I think that's one thing that we also could agree on. This will be an interesting the next 10 weeks of Purdue football. Really going to be interesting to see what happens.
It's so much fun. It's a great time of year, guys. I love it. We're starting to get to October, Halloween. The weather will cool off. High school football. I mean, walking to the games on a Saturday is unreal. And Brian and I have talked about too. Being on a college campus on a Friday afternoon on the eve of a game is one of the coolest places to be. So I try to do it everywhere I go, even in West Lafayette. As many times as I've walked around that campus, it's still fun to do on a Friday before games. So
now who has been in the Carrier Dome for an event, or the JMA Wireless Dome? Brian, have you ever in your life been up there in your day? And Tom, you have not?
Well, my only venture into was Cooperstown.
I'm the only one. I've been there twice for basketball. Purdue played there when I was a senior in college. Leo Routens and the Syracuse Orange men at the time, Orange and a young Jim Boeheim whipped up on Gene Cady. And then, of course, Purdue played there a couple of times in 1987 in the NCAA tournament. But
so how does this wireless company not figure out a way to work Carrier into their title?
I don't know.
That's like the lowest hanging fruit ever. If you were a wireless company and you've already got the word Carrier in your name, there's got to be something there, right?
I don't know. I don't even know what JMA Wireless is.
Who's your carrier? JMA Wireless.
Yeah, it is.
Right.
And their headquarters
giving free advertising to this company that I've never heard of.
Their headquarters are in Liverpool. So I don't know if there's Liverpool, England. I'm not sure. But
Liverpool, Mississippi.
The Carrier Dome is, or the JMA Wireless Dome. You'll have a good experience. It's just an interesting place to play. And my only advice to anybody is never go to a don't ever spend St. Patrick's Day in Syracuse. At least 30 some years ago, the craziest St. Patrick's party. Purdue was in the NCAA tournament. We could not get out of our hotel. That's all I remember. I was working in the athletic department at the time, and we had to have a special escort just to get to practice because there must have been 100,000 people in downtown Syracuse for St. Patrick's Day. But it won't be St. Patrick's Day on September the 17th. So, Tom, you're in good shape.
Hey, speaking of walking around a college campus on a football weekend, has anybody noticed on Meridian Street there across from the arena, that one power line is like hanging right down off the sidewalk?
I've seen that by the old
bank. I could reach up and touch it. And it just feels like that's something that on a college campus, no less, you got to tighten this up, man.
I know, and GoldandBlack's old headquarters.
Am I the only one who's noticed?
No,
this?
I don't know that I've driven by there. You talking about right in the corner, right across?
It's on Meridian, right at the junction of Northwestern. It's the power line right there next to that little house with the big field next to it where people park.
Which used to be the headquarters of GoldandBlack way back in 1990.
Before I was born, yes.
Yeah.
No, it's
I got to drive down and check that out.
It's hanging probably 10 feet off the ground.
Yeah.
And my vertical has deteriorated considerably over the years, but I'm not sure I couldn't jump up ever so modestly right now with my hands raised and touch this power line, which means one of these young strapping men or women on this college campus could probably not only jump up and touch it, but grab it, hang from it, and potentially even climb to the top of the. Now, some beverages might have to be involved for someone to do that, but that's more likely than not to be the case anyway.
Yes, I think you may be right. They may find good grounding in their shoes if that's the case. All right. On that note, we're going to bring this to a close. I think this
I completely ruined our podcast.
No, we would if we drew the math as the parabola or whatever we did. We went all different directions on it. But it's always fun. Tom, we're going to get you in the press box mid-afternoon next week or late afternoon, I'm sure, after the Purdue-Syracuse game. It'll be interesting to see how that one plays out. By then, we'll know if Nebraska beats Georgia Southern too. So
they're up 4 with 3 minutes to go. They just scored.
Good for Scott Frost. There you go. So, all right, guys, have a good rest of your Saturday. We'll have a lot on the site this week. As Tom says, the fun time of year. We'll be getting to basketball before long as well. Brian may have a better high school game to cover than he did last night. Doesn't sound like that was a challenging event for you, but we'll look forward to that as well. Have a great rest of your Saturday and Sunday whenever you consume this. We want to make sure also you can subscribe to our YouTube site. You can like it, you can comment, do all the same, but we will see you next week on our next edition of the Saturday Simulcast. Thank the Union Club Hotel as well. Thank Brian and Tom for all that they do, bringing Purdue football to you. Guys, have a great rest of the evening. And for all of you, thanks again for watching and listening.